All right, so we're back, and Daryl's in Europe. He's flown. How many hours is that from Sydney to Belgium, Daryl?
Like, it's just easier to talk in days. It's a day.
A day, like 24 hours or something.
Yeah, yeah, 26 hours. Yeah.
Really, oof, that's brutal. So
Yeah,
Daryl's
well,
there as some,
that's the
yeah,
price you pay for living across the world, eh?
yeah,
My
I guess.
choice. It's my choice.
Well, Daryl's there as the director of Israel Premier Tech. They have the Ardennes, and you're also going to be there, I think, for the Giro as well. And that starts tomorrow with Brabant Pale, and then Amstel Gold Race on Sunday. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. You've had some really great results in Amstel over the years. You finished 11th there twice, I think. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about Roubaix, because I know we had a show last week where we spoke a lot about Roubaix. So first off, let's talk a little bit about the women's race. Great performance by Pauline Ferrand-Prévot. I know I watched the whole race. I don't think you managed to catch it, so I'll talk a little bit about it. What stood out to me was, she was obviously suffering from an injury. She has an ankle infection, quite a bad one actually. She felt really unwell. They weren't sure she was going to race. But what happened was Lada Kopecky was just blowing up the race, with Weber's on her wheel. And Mariana Vos made a big effort to stay with her. And Pauline was caught behind a crash, and she sat in that second group, obviously not chasing her teammate. And that group eventually caught the front group when, Lotto Kopecky decided to kind of sit up and not drive the pace. But because Pauline was unwell and a bit sick, she had been hiding the whole race. She had been sitting in and obviously didn't chase her teammate down. When it all came back together, she put in one big attack, and that was it. She rode away. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know I've had the same experience when I raced. Some days when you're a bit sick and you go into a race, you actually ride a lot smarter, and in the end you have a lot more energy because you've been more conservative, because you haven't been well, and you end up having actually great legs because everybody else does too much and is too nervous and excited in the first part. What are your thoughts on her win and also that?
Yeah, I think it's a classic scenario of like, out of sight, out of mind, not knowing where she is, and obviously her having a teammate up front there saving her, like you said, like saving her energy is hugely beneficial. But no one could have scripted that, right? No one could have scripted that it would all come back together, and then you have one go, and then you go win Roubaix. It's obviously a bit of luck as well, and also the legs at the end of the day, of a hard day. So every bit of energy you save is to your advantage. But yeah, I mean, chapeau. It was great performance hearing what you're telling me now. But I think anytime you're ill, anytime you're sick, yeah, you do surprise yourself. Even sometimes you go to a race, you don't have great legs at the start. So you kind of like, you feel like you should hide because you're not having a good day. And then ultimately it just forces you to, you know, to just be a little bit creative and a little bit more canny in the race. And then all of a sudden in the end, you do surprise yourself. But this is probably one of those classic examples. But I think maybe where Kopecky might have, just underestimated, the group that's coming from behind. And then also normally when everyone's been dropped behind, you kind of feel like they're just as tired as me. But there's only been, nobody knows what's been happening behind, who's been chasing and who's fresh. So, yeah, I think those races are so difficult to predict. All of them, all those classics, the cobbles. Everyone comes through at a different stage. I mean, I watched in the men's race. It was the first time I've actually seen Tadej suffering. Like you could see he was putting in those attacks, but you could just see they were hurting him. And each time he put in an attack, you could actually see he was digging deeper. We saw those grimaces in Flanders. We started seeing him like, okay, he's digging deep here. It's not the normal just poker face. And this is what these races do to you. They destroy you. So you can do one bad move, and maybe Kopecky was kind of overexcited or overconfident from Flanders that kind of, you know, she
Yep.
was the opposite, right? Using too much energy because she felt so good.
Exactly. That's what I saw. I definitely saw like she was very confident in her ability after winning Flanders and almost did too much and underestimated, Pauline. So that was a great win. But the men's race, as you mentioned, I mean, to see Tadej suffering and Van der Poel, That was just incredible. I mean, his team came to the front early, over 100k to go. Van der Poel's team took charge of the race. Clearly that makes a statement like, we're here to win. And then the race really already 100k plus out. The guys were attacking. Pogačar, Van der Poel, Mads, they were all attacking already 100k's out. I mean, such an aggressive style of racing these days compared to the old days. Races didn't start 100k's out back in the day.
No, it's. I mean, guys are going earlier, but I also think it's because there's so much stress, right? There's so much emphasis on making these sectors. Like you saw the mad rush before the first section of cobbles, and you got to feel for Ineos because they were the only team who got it right. Ghana sitting in position 3, punches. The guy they're riding for, you see the team actually nailed it. They were the only team that nailed it. Van der Poel had to make his own way up there. He had to do a few little moves on the side there. But if you look at the teams that actually they like, you had Peterson who had like bad luck, a punch at the wrong time. He made that front group. Ghana obviously split before the race. It actually even kicked off, but you just see a lot of teams like burying themselves, and because they're putting so much emphasis to get into these cobble sectors first, the teams they don't have any more teammates really left, because it's basically a mad sprint just to get into these cobble sections, because that is the most important part. Is because if there's a crash on the cobbles, and we knew it was slippery before, if there's a crash there, your race could be over before it even gets going. So that's why these races are opening up earlier, because leaders are just going, I need to be there first. I'd rather be there first and have 2 teammates left for the last 160 Ks, because there's a good chance there'll only be 30 guys left anyway. Whereas in the past it was maybe like, we'll go through the first 3 sectors, we'll find a position, it's no stress yet. The Arenberg's where it happens. Whereas kind of now it's just like there's so much panic and stress that's why the races are opening up earlier. And you see a guy like today in some of the races before, and often races he races in, is that he basically strangles the race. And once he's got no more teammates left, it's just like, well, if I'm feeling tired now, there's a good chance everybody else is, and then it's mano a mano. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of races open up earlier.
Do you think also part of that is, because getting a flat can destroy your race in Roubaix? Do you think part of the reason those guys also open up the race so early is so that they can potentially have their team cards right behind them in case they do have a mechanical?
Yeah, well, you saw one stage, Alpecin was like just trying to get past today. Like, even though it was like still 20 seconds or so, they were just like doing everything to try to get past him, because they know in the next sector, if something happens to Van der Poel, if they're behind today, it's you're losing so much advantage. So you saw the stress. There was a couple close moments there. So it's hectic. Everyone gets into this race mode. Even the directors get into race mode where they kind of feel like they've got to get there, because if something happens, they want to be there first. And we saw that. We saw those things coming to light. But I think there's no doubt, like, if there was a race to win this year for Van der Poel, this is it. And that's why you're seeing a confident Alpecin team come in there. They've seen Van der Poel's the only guy who can ride with today, even in Flanders. He's clearly one of the strongest. It's the race that suits him the most. Of course, you're going to have a team committed.
It was good to see that today couldn't close the gap on Van der Poel in the end. I mean, he did close it pretty close. I mean, within, I think, 12 seconds at one point. But the fact that he wasn't able to time trial back to Van der Poel, after always dominating so many races where he's the one out front and nobody can come near him, it was kind of nice to see in a way, that he is beatable. What are your thoughts? Some people suggested that Van der Poel should have waited. I don't think he should have waited. I mean, I think part of winning Paris-Roubaix is being able to handle your bike and not crash, right? And the fact that Van der Poel is just so good and so skilled, that's part of the reason why he wins a race like Paris-Roubaix. What do you think about the fact that obviously he just didn't wait? When Pogačar lost it on that turn, Van der Poel just kept going and kept pushing.
Well, I think we've got to keep in perspective why should he wait when someone is attacking? If you're attacking someone in that moment and you're putting them under pressure, and you're putting them under pressure to make them make a mistake, maybe they make a mistake, or like you're trying to ride away from them. I mean, the gloves are off at that point already. If they were riding in a straight line and they were just sharing turns and someone punched it, I would have said, Van der Poel, maybe to win like that, it's a bit of like, they were sharing turns, it would have just been easier. But at that point in the race, Tadej was attacking Van der Poel. If Van der Poel punched behind him, Tadej wasn't going to wait. No one was waiting for anyone there. Somebody made a mistake, the other one was going to profit off it, or whatever it was. That's bike racing, you know. It was unfortunate for Tadej, but it was also his own mistake. This wasn't, you know, Van der Poel's mistake. And then you've got to remember, you've got guys chasing you 30 seconds behind you. There's no time to... Van der Poel doesn't know, oh, okay, Tadej is back up and running, he's got his bike quickly. He knows none of that information. So there's only one thing to do at that point is put your head down. You got to try win Paris-Roubaix, you know, one of the biggest targets for the year. And I still think the result would have been the same in the end. I don't see Tadej dropping. When you saw Tadej making those efforts in the race, you didn't see Van der Poel under pressure, not being able to close the gap. In fact, he was the only guy to ever close the gaps, and you know you could just see he was more confident. He was stronger in that kind of scenario. When the road's flat, when it's cobbles like that, Van der Poel is a better rider on that kind of course. So the result would have been the same, whether they waited for him or not. Did it make it more exciting for us? It did. And was it nice to see somebody like everybody suffer out there? Yeah, it was good. I mean, it would have been great to have a bit more battle for the TV, but I still think at the end of the day, it wouldn't have changed much.
Yeah. Now when you watch cycling, in the old days you could turn on the TV like an hour before the race and catch the action. Now you have to turn the TV on like 3 hours before the finish to catch the action. And most of the action happens then. And then the last hour is like just 1-1 time trialing guys. You know, it's changed quite a bit, right?
Well, once I saw to be honest, I didn't watch the final like 15K or something because it was so late. And once I saw the gap wasn't coming down, I just went, I'm going to bed. I know what the result is. So I didn't watch actually the finish of the race. But yeah, I mean, like that's the thing with these guys. It's like they are just like war heroes, man. That was a great part about it. It was like Pedersen, at least he got on the podium because I felt he deserved it. The guy who got flicked the most was Ghana, I think, for the day. His race was over before it even got going. They chased a lot, but yeah, it was a big day for him.
Yeah. And no radio for Van der Poel. It wasn't working. He didn't have a power meter. Today also didn't have a power meter. He did have a radio. So really these guys were going on feel in that final. Do you think that makes much of a difference? I mean, these guys know themselves so well that I don't even think they need a power meter. They know exactly how hard they can push themselves. But what are your thoughts on not having, just riding blind, mano a mano at the end there?
Probably better for them both, right? Sometimes the power meter can be restrictive to you. So yeah, who knows what they rode at or the power they rode at the end there, but probably shock a few people, themselves included. But yeah, I think another notable performance out there was Brennan, right? Like someone who's 19, first Roubaix. Everyone talks about you need the experience, you need all these things, and it's just like. This guy, like Catalonia, we saw the one that he did in Catalonia. He had a good year. It's a good start in Down Under. We've spoken about him before, but what a start to his classics. Like, nobody knows where this kid can go now. Like, you know, 19. If I was Jumbo, I'd be snapping him up and putting him on a longer contract. That's for sure.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
it was a super impressive performance. Like. You know, Wout was kept coming in and out. You know, he also had he kept missing a few splits, a few bad luck moments. But, yeah, when you saw Brennan really probably one of the strongest out of the whole peloton on that day was impressive.
It's interesting to see how, you know, we always talk about experience in these races, but then you see this 19-year-old kid riding better than guys who've done Roubaix 10 times, like, in the right place at the right time, you know, positioning himself incredibly before the cobbles. I mean, it's interesting how some people just have a knack for being able to ride in the peloton and sensing the race, whereas others never really figure it out, even though they've been pros for 10 or 15 years. Have you seen that as well?
Like, it's also difficult to say because when he comes back next year, is he still going to have if there's the same legs, everything? He could also be in this third group at Roubaix. You know, he's also like. Sometimes you just get a good run, like you get a good run in the race and you just miss the crashes or you just find yourself in the right position and it works out and you're like, oh, geez, this is like amazing. You know, like I can't believe how good this is. And he could have the same legs or even better legs next year and maybe not be there because something happens to him, he punches or someone else chops him up and he can't get through, or it's very difficult to say. But yeah, I mean the good guys are always there, right? Like even the way that Wout could ride through groups and still be able to like be there in the end, that was like impressive, you know. It was a massive ride. I don't know where. Yeah, it's difficult to kind of say like this guy has got tactically he knows what he's doing, but Brennan does. I mean, he's in the bunch sprints, he's in the races, he sniffs out wins here and there, so he can clearly handle his bike. Yeah, well, it's I don't know what to say about these guys. They like I think they've also learned to be professionals when they were so young too, right? The standard, you got to remember the standard that's coming up from these juniors through to the elite level now. Is by the time the guys turn 19, they're already seasoned pros. They're not the guys that back in my day was used to be like, oh, we'll ride the Vuelta, you can ride the first 10 days. These guys come in and they're like, they can do the full Vuelta. They could nearly, win a stage. So, yeah, the times have changed a lot.
Yeah, and also to come back to the power and today, I think he did have his estimated power on the Arenberg Forest, and according to Strava, I think he has the fastest all-time time on the Arenberg Forest, and they estimated around 520 watts for 3 minutes. A rider who's never done Roubaix, looked clearly at home on the cobbles, just an incredible all-round rider today. Just so impressive, to see that. And another thing, to go back on to the power meters and pacing and not having a power meter, I've seen some interesting studies where even within the same brands, there can be a 3% difference between the same brand. So when sometimes power is not always power. I know as a coach, I have clients who, they have different bikes, they have different power meters, and they think their power is a certain number, but, maybe the power meter is reading low, reading high. So I think people don't realize that there's actually a bigger discrepancy between power meters. And I think in the end of the day, you really have to understand your body and know how to pace yourself, know your own perceived exertion, and really listen to your body. And I think that's what these top guys do. I know Today spoke last year on a podcast saying that he doesn't trust power. He really uses heart rate a lot of the time because he knows he gauges his own effort. He doesn't always trust the power meter. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like where guys get too obsessed with the numbers and sometimes a high number doesn't even translate into a performance in the race?
Yeah, I think you are right. I think you can use the two to get like. I think you don't need to be just fixated just on power, right? Because power gives you like more of an accurate number, where heart rate is a bit varying and how you're feeling and fatigue and all those things. But yeah, I think you're right. Like I remember doing efforts and going like, oh, I was say 400 watts, or my coach would say like ride between say 400 and 420. Let's give that as an example. And I would just stay in that zone, and I would do the effort, and often I'd be like, oh, I got through them all right. But I remember like earlier on when I got a power meter in the early part of my career, I would be like, oh, he says 420, but I reckon I can do 430 or 440, let me see. And I would push myself more. It would have a better effect then, because then I was like, I want to push myself, versus the end of my career I was like, oh, I can tick these boxes. Oh, I managed. It's all good. And I even had this discussion with some of the guys going, do you like, at the end of my career, I was like, do you actually, when you go training now, do you like, if your coach says you got to ride at 400, do you just ride at 400, or do you go like, oh, I think I can do 420, and you go for 420? And most of them were like, oh, I often try and push a little bit more. And then I was thinking, yeah, that's like a good sign. That's when I know I should probably stop, because I'm just in the comfort zone now. I don't want to hurt anymore. I'm just like, yeah, I can do 400. It's fine. I'll do 400. Like, I don't want to do 420 anymore. But in the early parts, yeah, you would do 420 or whatever. So then it's quite effective, because you're trying to see where you can go. So I think if you use it for different ways, but there are some days where I think just going off heart rate, and actually the 1 year training for Down Under, I was having a problem with my power meter, and it wasn't reading properly. And my coach and I, we said, oh, okay, should we just try to do let's just do like heart rate based stuff. And I remember like working so hard to get my heart rate up, because I had to ride between a certain heart rate, right? And I'd be like training normally, I'd be like, gee, it took me ages to get to this heart rate. But I felt like I was pushing so hard to hit those numbers to get that heart rate zone. But ultimately I was probably riding at a much higher wattage than what I was previously, and I had my best I won down under that year, and then that was the first time I won down under, and there was also like I probably the best time trial that year as well after down under, and maybe it was because we were training just with a different metric, not even training on power. So just shows you, but you still want to go to that safe zone of like, because power just gives you that like, no one says, oh, I ride at 160 beats per minute, and that's my threshold. And somebody's wowed by that. It's just not a metric you can really measure, and it changes so often. So I think you still want to go back to that power zone, still want to go back to that thinking of something that's more measurable.
Definitely. But I think you really have to trust in your power meter and have the same power meter consistently and know it's working consistently. That's the key. And I think the big brands, the good brands, they do stay consistent. But when you chop and change between different bikes, often there can be discrepancies. I remember one
Maybe
time I
that's why I went
coached.
so. Maybe that's why I started going downhill when I changed teams because I changed power meter brands and I was still running off the old power meter numbers.
Maybe, yeah. I had a client who was using, a certain brand, and then they were smashing all their records by 50 plus watts, and they were like ready for the world tour. And then their team put them on a different brand, and all of a sudden everything dropped by 50 watts. And they were like,
Mm.
"What just happened?" I thought I was like ready to be like the next today, and now I'm like just average again. Like
See you today. See you tomorrow.
yeah. So yeah, parameters can mess with you. That's for sure. So let's talk about Amstel, a race you know really well. You're the director there for Israel Premier Tech at these races in the Ardennes. I know you're working hard, planning the strategy, planning, looking at VeloViewer. Somebody who's done Amstel, do you even remember how many times you've done that? Tell us a little bit about
Right.
the race and what it's like.
Man, I've done Amstel heaps of times. I don't know. I think it's probably like my 12th time being here or wherever. But yeah, Amstel's just like being in a Game Boy. It's like just you're riding, you just the whole day just in this game because there's so much happening. The roads are narrow. That's what makes this race unique. Is there's lots of short, steep climbs, very narrow roads. Then it goes onto a wider road for a kilometer, and then it's a big sprint to the next section, and then it's a race of position and it's a race of understanding. You don't come to Amstel first time unless you've got really good legs and you just make the final. But once you figure it out, once you figure out the key points of it, and there's a bit of method to this race, you can go quite far. Depends on when the big guns now fire away. So it's going to be quite difficult on the weekend. Sundays looks like it's going to be dry-ish, but it's hinting a bit of rain. Particularly this kind of race, when it does get wet, it gets very, very hectic positioning wise. So we will see probably the race open up a bit earlier then. But I mean, the course is the same, except for the finishing circuit. We're going back to the Cowberg, which is now going to be 2Ks before the finish line. It used to be about 15K before the finish line, and then we would do like the old world circuit that they used at Falkenberg. But now we're just instead of we do the Cowberg, then we do that world circuit, but then instead of coming back on the flat and finishing on the flat road, we're going back down to the bottom of the Cowberg and doing it one more time. So the Cowberg's a difficult climb. It's about 2.5 minutes flat out. I think Pitcock's got the record. I think that's what the coaches on our team uh, figured out. But yeah, it's a tough race, and there's so much that can happen. Like I say, these narrow roads are difficult, but it's a race that's open to a lot of riders. You usually get a bit of a mix, a bit of crossover between some guys coming from the Flanders Classics and then coming to this race, and this is one of their last races. And then you get from Flèche to Liège, you kind of get more of like your climbing group. So this race is a little bit of a crossover, and so is Brabantse-Pijl, which is tomorrow. Brabantse-Pijl's been moved to the Friday, interestingly enough. It used to be Wednesday. So I'm not a fan of it because I would have probably skipped Brabantse-Pijl if I was targeting Amstel. But it seems that most of the guys are going to Brabantse-Pijl, which is interesting.
And you have Remco making his comeback race. I believe it is Brabantse-Pijl, right? And
Yeah. They've shortened it.
today,
They've made it 160K, so it's a bit of a club race now.
is it that short, eh?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
short. I think they were mindful of it being so close to Amstel and then being able to still attract a very quality field.
Yeah.
Because I think it had been 210k like it usually is, 205k or whatever. Maybe you would have had a few guys opting out.
Yeah, it's I think it has a hard climb. I know my current one of my clients I coach now, Peter Vakoc on the gravel circuit. He won that when he was with Quickstep, and I think they have like a hard 1 minute effort right before the finish, right, and then basically 500 meters to the line flat.
Yeah, so the Brabantspel is also a different finish compared to when Vakoc won. It's not that steep pinch anymore. We're actually
No.
going a bit of a bigger road. It's still hard. It's still an uphill finish, still hard, but it's not the same. But we do the Moscow Strat, which was in the World Championships in the, when was it? Was it Leuven or the World Championships like 4 or 5 years ago when they had it in Belgium? But so we do the Moscow Strat, which wasn't in that edition that Vakoc won, which is a cobbled climb. It's a very narrow run in and quite hectic as well. So thing with Brabantse Pijl is it's all about position when you hit the circuits because it's cobbles, short steep climbs, cobbles. Usually a small group rides away. It's very attacking, very open. Um, or there's a very reduced sprint, but it's always a tough guy who wins, and it's always a good indicator of who's going to be going well at the classics.
And so that leads into Amstel. Today will be there. He'll be racing against Remco, which will be very interesting. And there'll be Pidcock as well, I think. So who do you think for this Sunday between the big guns?
Look, today is the favourite, 100%. He's again got a great team. Yeah, you got Pitcock, who's their only option for Q36.5, so that's going to be interesting. Obviously, they'll commit for him. You got Van Aert, he's coming, Tish Benutz as well there, so those are good players in the field. Yeah, I was actually going through the list of teams and riders and thinking who's going to be the leading team and leading riders, but it's such a quality field. You've got to like pick some teams. The Trek has got a great team with Nace is going to be someone that's going to be super interesting to watch go up the Carberg. It's a finish that suits him. He's a fast finisher. Could he be someone that could be able to go today? We don't know, but they haven't raced against each other a lot. But yeah, it's going to be quite a difficult one to predict. But if you have to put your money on it, you're sure you're going to go today, but just because of what he's done over the last few weeks and what he's done all season. But there's interesting guys. There's Healy who won in Basque Country. He's going really well. Someone that people don't really talk about a lot, but maybe not to win is outside for a podium is like guys like Bilbao, Boy Trago. The very, very, very accomplished bike riders here. So the field here, the depth here is a very, very deep field. It's probably one of the best fields that we've had. The only guy we're probably missing is Vanderpool, really. And then you've got everybody, all the big guns in the same race.
And you'll have Stevie Williams for Flèche Wallonne next week, Wednesday, I think it is. He won it last year in brutal conditions. And then we have Liège next Sunday. How's your team looking for these races coming up? Is Stevie looking good for a win again?
Well, yeah, look, we've had a few ups and downs. Stevie, he's had few troubles with knee issues and that, so he hasn't had the run in that he would have liked, which has been unfortunate. Our classics group's taken a bit of a hit, to be honest. We've had Woodsy, who's broke his collarbone, so he's out. He was someone that we were, really focusing on Liège. We've got Corbin Strong and Lutsenko that's going to be going, for Amstel. We've got a really good group there. Then maybe Flèche, it's a little bit more open for us. We got heaps of talented guys. We've got Nick Schultz, George Bennett, Joe Blackmore, which is a really interesting rider. Won 11 year last year. He's very new to the scene of racing, but also raced in Flanders. Was in that second group. Interesting enough for his first Flanders. So a very, very strong team. So we don't really have an out leader this year per se as last year, where we had Stevie, who was, put his hand up, won Flèche, very difficult race. And then we still had, last year we also missed Woodsy, who was also out for, I think he was also injured last year, or no, he was a bit sick as well. So he's second time missing the classics, the Ardennes, which is very hard for him because they're races he loves. And if you look at the finish of Flèche, it's a finish that suits Mark Woods down to a T. So, I'm a bit gutted for him that he can't be here because, in our team we have a lot of riders that are very good on these circuits. And last year we came with a team that was very, very upbeat. And this year we still have a great team. It's just that we don't have the standout leader. So we've got to think a little bit out the box this year. We've got to think about playing it a bit differently. But it also, I see it as opening up a lot of chances for a lot of guys in our group. And yeah, we could still see a few surprises. You know, even Stevie last year was a surprise. We knew he could do it, but obviously to win Flèche, it's not. No one can predict that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we got a very well-rounded team. I think we're looking forward to a lot of guys are excited to be here. And like I say, without having a pure set leader, I think there's a lot of guys that are quite interested at seeing how far they can go as well. So that's exciting too.
Cool. Those guys are racing right now at Giro de Bruzio, I think it is. Williams and I saw George Bennett. So I presume they're not doing Amstel, or they just have very little recovery?
Yeah, so they're not doing Amstel. We've got a different team for that. They're going to be focusing on Flèche and Liège. And yeah, you know, Stevie needed some race rhythm, try and get back into it. So that's why he's in Abruzzo. And George is just having a crack at the GC. So he's riding really well.
Awesome. Cool. So I think we'll leave it there. Look forward to doing another one next week after maybe Flèche Wallonne or before Liège. Hopefully some good news from your team there. Some good results after Flèche and Amstel. Anything else you want to share before we wrap it up?
No, I think strap up. I mean, it's going to be another
Awesome.
good week of bike racing, hey?
It's going to be exciting. We have those audio channels almost ready to go, and we'll definitely share those with you guys. Thanks again for all the encouraging words.
The YouTube's up. That's done. We got our logo and everything, so you guys can jump on the new Crankly Speaking YouTube channel. It'll be on there, and then like we said, the audio channels will come soon.
Great, good stuff. Thanks for all the comments. Please feel free to let us your thoughts. Let us know your thoughts on who you think is going to win Brabant and also Amstel Gold. And we look forward to chatting again next week. Cheers.
Cheers.